We have had a tough year in Portland, all right? We certainly have. I said that off the top of the show, and I've already gotten a couple of tweets from people who are like, what are you talking about? We haven't. There's no blemish on the city's reputation. I beg to differ. Portland has had a really, really tough year. We had the pandemic. Everybody shared that. But we had this economic downturn. A lot of people shared that. Our homeless crisis is growing out of control. We had the wildfire smoke. We had nights and nights and months of protests and violence for a long time. You probably remember this controversial Forbes op-ed from a few months ago with the headline, "Death of a City, the Portland Story." Whether or not you agree with that headline, whether or not you actually think the city is dying, well, that's not what we're talking about. I think it's safe to say that the reputation took a big hit, especially for people who don't live here, who don't see the little nuances and the nooks and crannies of this city. They just see these headlines and the national media coverage. Well, Travel Portland did a survey of potential tourists last October, and they found that people's opinions of the city has dropped significantly. It did in 2020. 37% of people said they consider Portland an unappealing vacation destination. And that's more than 32% of people who actually said they would consider Portland an appealing destination. They did the same survey at the start of 2020, right, around January or so. They found that 54% of people at that time considered Portland appealing, so a big drop off there. Now we're getting closer to summer travel season. The pandemic restrictions are starting to lift. People are starting to be more comfortable. People are getting vaccinated. So you can imagine the tourism industry here in town is hoping. They have hopeful attitudes about the city. Things are going to be changing. They think more people will start coming to visit. And one thing they're banking on for some good PR is a TV show, the new season of Top Chef. It premieres on Bravo tonight, and it was filmed right here in Portland during the craziest parts of the craziest year of 2020. We talked to Travel Oregon about what they're hoping to see from this kind of positive national attention after what's been an awful year for tourism.
Portland, like any city in America, was hit very hard. We certainly had other extenuating circumstances when the show was filming here. They were working through some of the situations that were happening within downtown. But I think that the show really did zoom in and understand that the city showed up for our residents from a racial justice standpoint. And we had many Portlanders who were out there supporting the cause and, protesting peacefully and looking at opportunities to really raise and have the critical conversation that needs to happen around how does our city build back as we come back, and how do we look better than we maybe looked before in some of those spaces. But the show also was dealing with and navigating some of the issues around conditions with wildfires and things like that. But they really, in all of the commentary and everything that we've had with them and what we've seen in the media, they've really pushed and had a commitment to helping Portland see a real turnaround and recovery and supporting the food scene here. Food is so central. I mean, we have chefs that have over the years really committed to and shared the fact that the reason they live and work here is the bounty of the Oregon harvest and the ingredients that we have. And people who are maybe newer to food travel or have really sought out destinations that were very culinary based, our opportunities here run the gamut. You can be looking at food carts to fine dining, to food and wine, beer, kombucha, all of the different things. And the scene really is a critical piece to the tourism element. We know that from our research that people who are driven by culinary travel or desires certainly consider Portland in their subset of cities that they want to look at, because we have been on such a national and international radar over the years. The pandemic has proven that hasn't changed. We have new restaurants opening in multiple areas of the city, food carts that are thriving, and we'll look to see, a real growing and booming food scene as we look toward these next months of recovery.
Well, she's positive. I mean, part of her job, really. Now, last night on The Story, we talked about the state of the restaurant industry, which is not good. She mentioned a lot of businesses opened, a lot more closed. The pandemic hit restaurants really, really hard. Hundreds of restaurants alone across the state were forced to shut down for good. You can check that out right now on KGW's YouTube channel.